Alright, guys, welcome to Immediate Review, where we see a movie in theaters and review it immediately in my car. We just got done seeing the 70mm version of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Before we begin, Dakota, what is 70mm?
Oh, okay. So 70 millimeter is a type of film that's bigger than 35 millimeter.
That's pretty simplistic. I'll probably put some images of the different image size, but basically it's just better quality.
Okay, so for like 100 years, most movies were shot on 35 millimeter film, and that's what they were shot and projected on. And on occasion, there was a rare format called 70 millimeter, which is just twice the size, and it just looks better, sounds better. For the modern age, it kind of has the clarity and sharpness of digital, but like the color and contrast of film, so it's kind of the best of both worlds visually. And yeah, it just fucking looks fantastic, and it's super special and rare.
And it deserves to be appreciated.
And Hollywood Theater is the only theater in Oregon, I'm pretty sure, that can do it. I've heard rumors that they have another one, but I think the only show they did was Hateful Eight. But
yeah, I think in Portland it's the only theater.
Basically, it's a big old fancy special film type.
Sounds good. All right. So we've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a few times at this point. I believe Dakota saw it at Regal and Digital twice, or just once.
All right. So I've seen it in standard digital, IMAX, 35 millimeter, and 70 millimeter.
And we saw it in 35 millimeter twice.
Yes. So we're very familiar with this movie.
We mostly are doing this review for the 70 millimeter version specifically.
But who cares? Let's get to it.
All right. So, what we think of the movie, it's amazing. It's an incredible movie. A lot of people, especially advertisers, are calling it, Tarantino's magnum opus. And I believe that that's probably true. It is definitely his most important work of art that he's ever made at this point.
Most important?
Yes.
Elaborate.
I just think that in terms of a lot of his movies, it's just a simple, story, revenge tale, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is more grounded in what I would call reality. It feels like this event could take place moreover than, like Kill Bill, where, a group of assassins are...
Kill Bill is a movie within a movie, though. So
that's kind of what I mean, is this one is, grounded in more real life world rather than movie, inside a movie type environment.
Okay.
And yeah, it just shines a light on, just that perfect time in Hollywood when, things were starting to change and adapt and move to where we are today. And it's an incredible film.
Yeah, that's exactly... I think it is an interesting setting because it literally is the transition from, like, just when big studio Hollywood was kind of on the decline and didn't know what to do, and they were still kind of playing it safe, and the 70s came, and just like things started to get more violent. There was like more diversity in filmmaking afterwards, and it's just like this movie represents just like a transitional period into the next stage of Hollywood. And kind of, it's almost like this violent act is what starts it. I don't know.
I mean, it's just incredible all around. He's an amazing writer. Watch interviews with people who work with Tarantino, and yeah, they'll say that he's just a titan of the industry to work with. He just he knows how to. A lot of directors, they're good at thinking about things from an editing perspective, or working with actors, or working with CGI and creating events in their movie around those structures. And Tarantino's just like a master of all of it. He just knows how to put things together. Actors, they don't normally improv a lot of stuff with him, because his writing, they say, just has this like flow to it and rhythm.
There are occasions, but you're right, yeah.
And yeah, he's just he's an incredible filmmaker, and yeah, this movie definitely did not disappoint after The Hateful Eight.
Yeah,
which we love, by the way.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this movie for like 2 years. I remember when it was initially announced. It was like, he's gonna do a Manson movie, and Tarantino kind of clarified. He was like, no, it's not really a Charles Manson movie. Like, Manson's in it, and so Sharon Tate, but it's not really about them. They're just in it. And so there was, like, a lot of confusion. Like, what is this movie? It's been so shrouded in mystery. And then he announces more, and he's like, oh, yeah, so it's actually about these two, like, guys, and they're, like, it's an actor and a stunt double, and they're trying to make it. And so it's just, like, it's just been so perplexing, just like, how are these two things going to merge together?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the obvious question that comes to mind. Tarantino is like known for his violence, and we all know like what happened to Sharon Tate. And when you hear like Tarantino's gonna make a movie with Charles Manson and Sharon Tate,
mm-hmm.
you're like, well, fuck, like, is he gonna go there? And
that was the main question my brother asked when I went and saw it. He was just like, so does it happen? And it's like, I mean, yes and no. And yeah, to not spoil it, I didn't really go into detail, but
yeah, little by little we started seeing pictures, and I've been getting more and more hyped for this, and it did not disappoint in any way. However, oddly enough, the first time I saw it was I enjoyed it the least. It's not one of those movies that's kind of like, I fucking loved it the first time, and then the hype kind of died. Like, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's awesome. I was like, it's like mid-tier, lower mid-tier Tarantino. And then when I saw it again, I was just like, no, this is really something special. Like, this is something else.
Yeah, I definitely recommend you watch it twice. If you watched it the first time and thought it like dragged on, just too long, pacing was weird, watch it again. It is incredibly better the second time once you know how the flow happens. And yeah, it does not feel like a 3-hour movie to me anymore.
Yeah, I thought the second time I watched it, I thought I was too tired the first time. I looked back on it and I was like, oh, I must have been exhausted last night because it felt slow. And then you guys, it was your first time, and you had all said like, oh yeah, it was great, but it was slow. And yeah, it flies by on your,
it really
next
does.
Viewings.
Yeah, the pacing's perfect. There really isn't a wasted scene. I mean, and we've talked about before, I feel like there's stuff missing.
See, and that's what's interesting is the first time I saw it, that's kind of why I didn't enjoy it as much, because there are scenes that almost seem wasted. Like, I remember the scene where Cliff is feeding Brandy. I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ, the man is feeding his dog. I get it. Like, right. I was like thinking like, I mean, this isn't bad or anything, but do we really have to devote like 2.5 minutes to just like him feeding his dog? I guess, it's painting a picture of his shitty life, but like,
right.
I get it.
It ends up coming back towards the end.
And exactly. And then once you see it, it's like, it's amazing every time afterwards. And yeah, it's I've enjoyed it more and more. This was the 7th time I've seen it in theaters, and it's great. This will probably be the last time I've seen it in theaters, because it's just the 70mm version looked amazing. Let's fucking talk about it. Do you wanna go first? Or?
Yeah. So I definitely have the least amount of experience with 70mm. We've gone to see a few different movies here in Portland and in Seattle.
So you've seen 2001: A Space Odyssey, Roma.
Yep.
Let's see.
The Last Crusade, Indiana Jones.
Indiana
Last
Jones,
Crusade.
the Dark Crystal.
Yep, Dark Crystal.
What else?
Dunkirk and Wonder Woman.
Dunkirk and Wonder Woman.
Yeah, so
yeah,
I've seen a bit, but in terms of research, I'm definitely not as experienced as Dakota is. But I thought that this print of experience of the 70 millimeter was probably the best out of the ones that I've seen, especially Dunkirk at the Cinerama in Seattle. The motion in 70 millimeter is kind of hard to get used to. It's a lot bigger, and some of the stuff that is out of focus, it basically just enhances everything. So everything that's in focus looks incredible, and everything that's out of focus, that's enhanced as well.
Yep.
And so you get, if there's a lot of handheld camera or motion back and forth, it can be, dizzying.
Well, there was something about the distance too with that theater. But
yeah.
Continue.
But yeah, this one, I felt it was super smooth. There's scenes where Sharon and Polanski are walking in from their flight in one of the first scenes, and the motion between them walking and everybody behind them, and when their legs are in sync, it just looks perfect.
It did. The flicker was smoother too. Like during the when it shows the poster of like. Kill him swiftly, or get him quickly, Ringo said the gringo. Kill him quickly. On the 35 millimeter version, like when it was a pure white background, you could faintly see like the black flicker of the frames, and on this version, it was just like perfect pure white.
Yeah.
Like, it's the colors popped a little more too, because this movie. So it was shot in 35 millimeter, and then they basically just duplicated the size of it to 70 millimeter. It wasn't actually shot in 70 millimeter, so truthfully, in another world, the movie could look slightly better if it was shot in that. But Tarantino wanted to use like snap zooms and all sorts of things. This movie actually uses 3 film gauges, so technically we experienced all 4 in a way, because so the little shots of the Italian behind the scenes, and when it shows like Abigail and what's his nuts on swimming around in the pool and stuff, those are 8 millimeter, and then all the Bounty Law scenes,
love those,
and the Operation Dynamite, those are 16 millimeter. And then most of the movie shot in 35, and then we saw it projected in 70. So, it was just... That's the thing about this movie. I guess, side tangent, we were talking about 70 millimeter, but I'll remember my tangent. Continue about 70 millimeter, what you thought.
I thought that it was excellent. There was, it's a lot like the 35 millimeter print, but you can just tell that there are some things that are better, color contrast, things like that. Like when the blood flows into the pool and you have the huge red and blue contrast and whatnot, looked way better in 70 millimeter.
Well, with 35, it is a duplicate of a negative, so it's like it's not drastic, but it is just like ever so slightly not as good as the original negative, where since 70 millimeter is better than 35, when you duplicate it onto it, it looks closer to the original, like what the negative would look like, and it's fucking amazing.
And yeah, like when we saw Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, that was I don't know if that was shot in 70 millimeter.
It wasn't. That was a blow up as well. But that looked incredible. I mean, blow ups look great. They don't look bad by any means. Wonder Woman was a blow up. I mean, shit. Some of the best prints I've seen were blow ups.
Right.
So.
But the sound on Indiana Jones was way, way better than the like standard, Blu-ray versions or something that you'd see in comparison to the 35 millimeter to 70 millimeter version of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It wasn't a huge difference like I experienced.
Oh, really?
With that. The audio felt I mean, it's not bad by any means. It's just as good as any other format. But I didn't really notice a huge improvement
I
on that.
I did with some of the just very tiny background. I mean, minuscule improvements. Uh, just like one scene that comes to mind is there's one song I'm trying to find that's in the movie when Cliff leaves the house, George's house. A song is playing, and the previous 6 times there was only like 2 seconds of the movie where I could actually hear that song, but I couldn't hear it well enough to actually tell what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I'm like, I don't recognize the song. This print, I heard a good like 6 or 8 seconds of it. Still couldn't tell what the fucking song was.
Right.
But there were a lot of little moments like that where it was just like, if this sound was in 9 out of 10 before, it's a 9.5. Like,
Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Just barely. But the thing about this movie is that it's like a tribute to movies, and not just like, old school Hollywood, late 60s westerns and stuff, but just like in terms of, I don't know, the style and appreciation for movies. Like, while it's about a lot of, that type of stuff, there are a lot of scenes of just them watching movies and TV and just enjoying. I mean, there's like the excellent like sequence with Sharon where she goes to the movies when Brad Pitt or Cliff goes home and watches the TV show, and he's just like, making jokes to himself when him and Rick watch his premiere of FBI. They're at the Manson Ranch. They're all sitting around watching TV. Is just like
the drive-in that Cliff lives near.
The drive-in. It's just, there's a theme of just like that TV and movies and entertainment impact everybody. From the great people of the world and the killers of the world. Even, it's interesting, like Paul Revere and the Raiders, both, like Sharon Tate and the Manson family both listened to Paul Revere and the Raiders in the movie. That kind of goes along with like the main theme I want to like talk about of the movie. That I think the main theme is, which is it's the movie is all about like how violent cinema impacts people's lives. And how it can like inspire some to create and entertain, or how it can inspire others to like kill and do horrific crimes, because it's not that frequent, but some people like to pretend it doesn't happen, but it does happen, where people take works of art and use it to commit crimes. And I think it's really bold of fucking Tarantino, because he's been accused of that type of stuff, like, glorifying violence, and so people, watch his movies and then want to kill people and stuff. And I think it's bold for him to like acknowledge that it happens, but also, show the good side of it. I mean, throughout the whole movie, the producer's like, oh, all the shooting, I love it. And he's like, yeah, a lot of killing, and just it's throughout the movie. It's and that's what inspires the Manson family to finally kill and like take out the task, is because they just grew up with violence all their life on TV, and they directly acknowledge it. And what else? There's so many other examples. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, the big one though that I love is Sharon Tate when she's watching her movie. Like through most of the movie, she's kicked back, relaxed, with her feet propped up, And then when her scene when she does her kung fu comes on, she props up, like is more attentive,
goes through the stances,
and and she like starts mimicking it, and it's just like, here's this like sweet innocent person who, you know, we know like went through this horrific thing, and the violent scene is, you know, what makes the non-violent person like most excited. I mean, because, you know, I'm proud to be, you know, a non-violent person. I've been violent before, but I strive to not be. And like, I gleefully love to watch movies where people get fucking maimed. And Jesus Christ, someone just almost crashed into someone. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting and bold concept to tackle, but he tackles it very subtly, I think. I've read some reviews where it's just like, this movie's about nothing, like, it's they don't connect the dots, because there are a few times where it's very clear, but overall it's hard to put together that theme. Alright, so let's see. Let's go through the list of all the the great things about the craft of filmmaking. So directing. Any comments you want to say about? Oh, sorry, actually. Any themes you want to comment on? That was the theme I talked about.
Well, this originally was your theme as well, but this is one of the first movies that Quentin's actually put some of his own
yes,
issues and, you know, just his own person into the movies. You know, like, you could argue True Romance, you know, was putting himself in a movie, but I think
that's exactly why he didn't direct it, because he did base Clarence partially on himself, like, in terms of his attitude and interests.
But this one, I think, where Rick Dalton isn't necessarily through personality like Quentin Tarantino, a lot of the issues
not at all. I mean, he hates fucking spaghetti westerns, first of all.
But a lot of the emotional turmoil that he goes through, especially when he's reading the book about Easy Breezy.
No, yeah, exactly. That,
you know, a lot of that stuff Tarantino deals with. You know, he feels like he's, you know, getting older and doesn't want to be a washed up director, and, you know, a lot of that mindset that he has now is brought to life.
He's publicly said that. Like, that's not us speculating.
Yeah.
He's said it many times that that's why he wants to stop at 10, is he fears becoming an old shitty director.
Yeah. And so, you know, to have and essentially show an actor being put into an era of time where the business that they're doing is rapidly changing, and you know, watching them evolve. Like, he doesn't end up in a spot that's amazingly better than when he started. You know, when Al Pacino's talking to him about having to go and, you know, do these westerns, he's like, you know, this is, you know, gonna suck. I don't want to go and, like, you know, see these westerns and whatnot, or be in them or whatever. And when he comes back, you know, he has some money with him and he's married, but, you know, the apartment that he had in Rome took into a lot of his profits, and he isn't able to keep, you know, Cliff as his stunt double anymore. You know, it's not necessarily about rising over the challenge of the environment you're in, but more just adapting to it and continuing to do what you love and plan ahead regardless of the you know, cards that you may have been dealt.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah. I fully agree. I also think there's a thread of like being successful but not being that successful. That was one thing I was surprised about in the movie. I expected the movie to be about, like, Rick Dalton's like a huge fucking megastar who's on the decline, not someone who's just like kind of famous but not really,
and isn't necessarily highly acclaimed in the public eye since he got Bounty Law canceled for wanting a movie career.
Yeah, and his window's kind of closing. And so, not only that, but him and Sharon share a similar thing, except Rick's on his way out and Sharon's on her way in. Because at this point, she'd only made 5 movies. And I think one of them, she was the star. And all the other ones, she was like 3rd or 4th billing. So she really wasn't like a household name. And the movie kind of shows that with when she goes to the theater.
And gets her picture taken.
I mean, her name's on the fucking marquee, and they're still like, what? Who are you? And
yeah, exactly.
And so she's still, like, trying to make it. And, you know, that's why she gets so much joy when the audience, like, gets a reaction out of her. And that's another thing I'd like to mention about that scene that I love, is that, like, you know, Tarantino probably knows that a lot of people watching, like, probably haven't seen one of the 5 Sharon Tate movies. So he just gives you a chance to just, like, see a little bit. And
were those actual, like,
that's one of her movies. Yeah, that's awesome. That is her movie. And so he lets you connect to the real Sharon Tate. Yeah, it's really fucking great. So yeah, and there's also an element of like how the smallest action of fate can make or break a career. Like, you know, what would have happened if the actual Manson family had accidentally gone to a different house, and like what would have her career have been, and you know, what would have happened to Roman Polanski. So do you know about Roman Polanski? Like,
I don't know a ton about it. No.
Basically, Roman Polanski is a bad rapist guy, and it's the question almost comes up of like, would he still be, if, I don't know, because some people say that it was part of it was the trauma, and like, really? Would he have still been in a relationship? And like the movie talks about specifically about how Sharon would be with Jay. You know, the movie's basically the only 2 things the movie communicates about Roman Polanski are that he's a Polish prick and then he hates dogs. But yeah, he's not allowed back in the country anymore.
Really?
Yeah. It's like a big thing, and it's like a lot of celebrities defend him and stuff, and that's another just like super sensitive subject that people were like, what the fuck, Roman Polanski's in the movie? Like, editing. Alright, so I will say, like, I have noticed that ever since Sally Menke died, since Inglourious Bastards, that was her final film. She edited all of Tarantino's movies. Ever since she died and he got a new editor, Fred Raskin, the editing hasn't been the same. And it's not bad by any means. It's just not quite as God, I don't know how to describe it. Just punchy. I don't know how to describe it, but just this movie especially has a lot of conventional editing techniques, which isn't bad, but I don't know, and I find it interesting that like Tarantino has always said like, oh, I don't have director's cuts because, you know, I made the film I wanted to make the first time I saw it, or I made it. But at this point, an extended cut of Django is coming. There's an extended cut of Hateful Eight on Netflix, and he's working on one for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, apparently. So it's like Sally Menke was able to deliver satisfying cuts, and I read in a review where someone's like, oh, does this mean we're getting Inglourious Bastards? And he's like, no, I have a bunch of footage, but no extended cut on that. It's just like, I don't know, and after I saw it for the third time, I can definitely spot a lot of holes where there are like scenes should be here, and you can tell it's cut really short.
At the pool scene at the Playboy Mansion.
Yeah, there's a lot of Sharon partying in the trailer that's not in the movie in various different locations. Yeah, but still, it's really good. The editing's not bad by any means. It's just it is interesting to me that he used to kind of be like firmly against director's cuts, and with his new editor, he's like, all right, let's do it again.
For sure.
Should we talk about the two trailers real quick?
Sure. So what were they?
Dolomite.
Dolomite, and then there was one more. What was the second one?
So we'll talk about the second one after we talk about Dolomite.
All right.
So tell me your thoughts on Dolomite. I've kind of talked most of the time.
I mean, I think that it looks interesting. You know, it's another movie about, you know, filmmaking, black culture, you know, coming up in the start of, you know, what are they called? The blaxploitation
cinema. Yep.
And yeah, you know, somebody trying to, you know, make what they can, and kind of the rise of essentially an empire on that regard, because a lot of those films, you know, like Shaft, are very popular. They just made a new Shaft this year, so
yeah, and a lot of them too aren't very popular, sadly enough. So this is a great way to bring attention to it. It honestly kind of, I got Disaster Artist vibes, but because the Dolomite movies aren't great. They're fun, but they're like they're very cheesy. Like, he's just like a kung fu pimp. Like,
that seems like what they were trying to make him out to be in the trailer.
And so, you know, I don't mean that in a way to compare him to Tommy Wiseau, but just in the sense of like a funny movie about making a movie that's, you know, like silly and culty. But man, Eddie Murphy, it looks like he's making a comeback.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's
this is no Meet Dave. You know, this is Stone Cold Eddie Murphy coming back.
We're gonna be up here. It's playing the weekend of The Room.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
So we're gonna be meeting Tommy Wiseau next month.
Yep. Keep an eye out for that one. Smash that like button. But yeah, that was a joke, by the way. But yeah, I'm super excited. Dolomite is not my name, but that's the name of the movie. Dolomite is my name. And it's gonna be awesome. So the second film, Martin Scorsese's The Irishman.
Okay, that's the one. Yeah. So I don't know a whole lot about Jimmy Hoffa.
So I don't know much either, except that nobody knows anything about his death.
Okay, so he's the guy that, like, they're all the myth busting shows, they're trying to find his body.
Yes.
And whatnot. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I gotcha.
That is Jimmy Hoffa. So this movie, you know what? Fuck the Avengers. This is like the Avengers of mob stars coming together.
That's true. That's totally true. Yeah.
It is Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Joe Pesci's first role in like 15 years. I think Lethal Weapon 4 was his final film.
Really?
I'm probably wrong on that, but like it's around that. Yeah, I have high hopes, and Martin Scorsese is still amazing.
Yeah, it looked really good. Like, it was shot really well.
Yeah, all of his movies are just great, and his last one, it's weird that it said it's playing exclusively at Hollywood, but
that is true. Yeah.
Because Martin Scorsese tried to fight for a nationwide release, and yeah, Netflix wouldn't give it to him. They let him shoot it on film, though, which I was happy about. It was the first time Netflix has lifted their rule, because Netflix like requires that all their stuff is shot on the same equipment. But
right.
Yeah, The Irishman looks fucking incredible.
All right, so I
and
guess like overall thoughts.
overall thoughts, it's fucking Tarantino. I mean, it's incredible. It's well written. It's well acted. It's
Shot amazing.
yeah, the cinematography is fucking incredible. It's
Go see this movie.
Yeah.
Okay, go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Just do it.
It's been 2 months, and you probably have. And if you haven't, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's one of those movies that you just gotta do it. Don't be like, oh, it's almost 3 hours long. I can't sit in a theater that long. No, you do it. Okay, you put a diaper on.
You did it
and
for Endgame.
You
can do it for
sit
this.
in that theater.
You put a diaper on? Is that what you said?
Yes, you put a diaper on, and if you need to go, then by the glory of the Queen, you let it flow. All right, that's all I can say, and you stay in there and you watch that whole movie because it's incredible, and it's highly recommended. Tarantino is the greatest director of our generation.
Yeah, I concur. I really do. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys for coming to Immediate Review. We're gonna get back on the road. We'll see you all in the next video. All right. Peace, everybody.